Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's event with a focus on profit motive and the business of design, an A&D Leaders 101 on financial management. First of all, I wanted to thank AIA CIC President of the Board, Ursula Curry, for inviting me to present as part of 2023's Practice Management series. We have a long history in a large architecture firm in San Francisco. I'm also grateful for AIA CIC chapter staff, in particular Mike Wilson and Sydney Yokum, for setting this event up. Thank you very much. Today's event is structured in 7 parts. Part 1 is the host and event introduction. Part 2 dives into the basic terminology used when reviewing financial reports. Part 3 highlights the top KPIs an A&D firm should monitor. Part 4 addresses how successful growth models for A&D firms are built. Part 5 dives into the financial report types an A&D leader should monitor regularly. In part 6, we look at the systems most likely used in A&D firms. And lastly, in part 7, we open up for Q&A. So please type in your questions into the chat box so that in a way I can address them as a group at the end of the event. So let me introduce myself and give you some insight into my background. My name is Elisabeth Sporer. I work as a A&D business strategist, a management consultant, and as a leadership coach. I have been part of over 50 firms as project leader, part of management and firm leadership teams, and now as a strategy consultant and owner of my own architecture firm. My list of 40+ clients includes firms that range from sole proprietors, excuse me, to large international firms. My approach working with clients combines business strategy with leadership coaching. Today's event continues the dialogue I started in 2018 with a series of presentations I am organizing to offer fresh perspectives on topics relevant to A&D practices. Some of the events are available on AIA US recorded programs, and you can earn educational learning units when going through AIAU. Other events are centered around topics like business strategy, ownership transition, entrepreneurship, mentorship, and international practice. Recordings of most events are available on my website's event page. See the QR code on the left, and also I pasted it in the chat box at the beginning. My monthly newsletters offer insight into my thinking and the trends I see working with my clients. So when we're leading a growing A&D firm, you are or will become familiar with the terms income or profit and loss statement, net revenues, operating expenses, overhead cost, and operating profit. Now, this is a quick refresher as I did this part of the presentation before, and if you want to have more in-depth knowledge about it, I would check my events page out. So in the basic terminology, here we look at an abbreviated version of a profit and loss statement. To read a profit and loss statement, you need to know what it means when we talk about net revenues, operating expenses, overhead cost, and operating profit. Let's start with the net revenues. The total revenue is referring to the invoices a firm sends to its clients and includes direct expenses. So net revenues is the total invoice minus the direct expenses like engineering consultants. Direct expenses are included in invoices to clients and paid from the revenues collected. And direct expenses are not part of a firm's overhead or operating cost. Direct expenses are not incurred except for when being on a project, be it labor or be it cost of materials. So we go to the next term, operating expenses. So operating expenses encompass 4 expense categories. There is a direct labor cost, which are the actual wages paid to staff spent working on a client project, recorded at each staff's standard rate, meaning the standard billing rate is the total salary divided by 2080. Then there's the indirect labor cost. Indirect labor costs are the actual wages paid to staff spent while not working on client projects. That could be vacation, sick time, holidays, recognized as benefits, or necessary activities such as marketing, business development, training, continued education, and administrative or organizational tasks. Payroll-related expenses are all the expenses that incur in addition to an employee's salary. Could be the taxes and benefits. Or 401k contributions. And then there's other indirect expenses. Other indirect expenses could be facilities, corporate, and non-labor market costs like rent, insurance, car, transportation, business fees, licenses, taxes, and marketing expenses. So now we look at overhead cost. The overhead cost includes indirect labor costs, as I just had explained, and the overhead expenses like payroll-related expenses and other indirect expenses. And then there is the operating profit. So what is left for a firm from all its net revenues after it has paid staff and all of its other operating expenses? That's the operating profit. The money a firm has generated from its operation. So we went through all these 4 categories, and we continue now to the next part of the presentation. We talk about what are the top KPIs. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicators. So there's the operating profit rate, there's the utilization rate and target utilization. There is net effective multiplier, also called NEM. There is overhead rate and break-even rate. So we look back into the generic kind of profit and loss statement, and we grab the numbers to really make the case as to how each one of these KPIs is calculated. So we talk about the operating profit. The operating profit rate is expressed as a percentage of the net revenues. It is calculated by dividing the direct labor. That's a mistake. An operating cost, excuse me. It is calculated by dividing the net profit, the operating profit by the net revenues. An operating profit rate of 12 to 18% is the industry average for architecture firms in the US per the AIA. So this firm has net revenues of 200,000 and an operating profit of 10,000. So it makes a 10% profit on its operations. The next KPI I had listed was the utilization rate. So the utilization rate is calculated by dividing direct labor cost over total labor cost. So you have to add indirect and direct labor costs to get the total labor cost in that case. It's a 61% for this firm, which is not bad, but I get back to that a little later in more detail. So the utilization rate reflects the percentage of billable or direct hours out of total hours. An A&D firm's largest expenses are payroll and payroll-related expenses, and they're within 65 to 80% of the total operating expenses. So the question you could ask yourself as an owner is, for all of the dollars paid to people, how many of them actually go towards billable client projects? So 61% in this case. The 61% utilization falls within the average utilization rate of 60 to 70% of an architecture firm per the AIA. Now we look at the term target utilization. So each staff level is assigned a target utilization rate that reflects a sufficient amount of overhead hours like vacation, holiday, and sick time, plus time for overhead tasks like marketing, administrative, and operational nature. So let's look at briefly at an individual staff's target utilization rate. This shows a junior level staff that works exclusively on billable projects, no administrative or overhead hours. The target utilization is not higher than 90% because of the sick, vacation, holiday hours. So that's the maximum a staff typically can accomplish with a firm that gives 10 days vacation time, 7 to 8 days sick time, and 9 paid holidays. Staff's target gross utilization rate cannot exceed 90%. The target utilization ranges from 30 to 60% for principals and 60 to 80% for other senior level staff, and is within a 70 to 85% for mid-level and junior level staff. Now we look at the next term, net effective multiplier, or often abbreviated as NEM. The NEM is calculated by dividing net revenues by direct labor cost. Small firms may have an NEM multiplier of 2.2 to 2.5. Mid-sized firms often fall in the 2.5 to 3.2 range, and large firms are in 3.2 and above. It can easily over 4.0 for large firms in my experience. The larger that NEM is, which refers also to firm size possibly, the more the labor has to produce net billings, net revenues or billings. What it means in reality is that the hourly standard rates are higher as the firms get bigger or as the NEM gets bigger. A junior or intermediate level staff candidate that has a 75,000 salary at a 2.0 NEM has a break-even billing rate of $72 an hour, whereas at a 2.5 NEM, that is $90 an hour. And at 3.0, this is already a $108 per hour. And at 3.5, it goes up to $126 per hour. That just to be at break-even level, not even to add profit on top of it. So the question you ask yourself is, for each dollar in salary that goes towards a billable client project, how many dollars does the firm bill in return? So that's the additional markup that has to be built on top of it. Now we look at the overhead rate. It is calculated by dividing overhead cost by direct labor cost. Overhead cost includes indirect labor, payroll-related indirect expenses, and other indirect expenses. So to pay for overhead expenses, a firm must charge enough for its services to cover both the direct labor cost put in the project and the overhead cost that the firm needs on top of it. So the industry median is 170%, which this firm is right on with the numbers we have presented here. Now we look at the break-even rate. The break-even rate is calculated by adding 1 to the overhead rate, or 1 plus overhead cost over direct labor cost. So for every dollar of direct labor costs incurred for a project, this firm also has another $1.70 in overhead costs. Further, it means that the firm has to realize $2.70 in fees to cover both the direct labor and the overhead costs in order just to break even, not even to generate profit. So the break-even rate kind of gives you also the kind of break-even cost eventually for the firm to keep the door open. This we just had already. So in summary, the operating profit rate for this firm is 10%. The utilization rate is 61%. The net effective multiplier is 3.0. The overhead rate is 170%. And the break-even rate is 270%. Now let's look at the growth revenue model. So most A&D firms have the desire to grow their practice over time. It allows staff to grow into leadership positions, and the practice can explore expanding into different markets or project types. Now, how do you grow a firm wisely? We will look at some data and trends in this section of today's presentation. I went through the first two parts rather quickly because like I said, there's a more expanded version available for the ones of you that really want to dive more into it. So I want to spend more time on the last 3 or 4 sections today with hopefully more explanation. So the data and trends we look at today. So we look at an A&D firm business plan. We look at a typical firm's organizational chart. And then we look at the organization org chart and revenue model for a firm with 1 to 4 employees. We look at an org chart and revenue model for a firm with 5 to 10 employees. And then we look at the org and revenue model for a firm that is larger than 11 employees, not going into too much more details at that point because it applies literally to almost any size firm. Then we look at trends, administrative staff as a percentage of total full-time employees, and the trends of administrative staff to profit, how are they related? And also trend of administrative staff, utilization and profit rate, how are they related? So I encourage my clients to look at all 4 areas of an A&D business when growing and follow a business plan while doing so. This is a business plan of a firm. It looks at the 4 areas of brand, practice, operations, and finance, and also the leadership team, and sets goals and margins around each one of these areas over the course of several years. So pay special attention to the leadership team composition. Who is part of it? What personality and communication style drives their behavior and decision-making? What values do they have? Are they adding to the firm's basic values? What is their vision? Can they motivate and inspire others? And most of all, will they bring in work as a big contributor to a leadership team and ownership team in particular? When it comes to the brand, when growing, you may consider whether you add marketing support staff or you invest in the systems. What clients do you pursue and how? In the practice session, you ask yourself, do we have guidelines and standards to execute projects? How do we keep the quality of our work high? In the operations part, you ask yourself, who is supporting all of us, the administrative team? Do we have job descriptions, tools to measure our success? And in the finance part, do we have the systems and people in place to understand how the firm's finances stand now and in the near future? So you invest possibly in staff or systems to have a system that can measure that and predict that. So let's look at an A&D firm's typical org chart. You can see 3 layers or tiers: the get the work, the manage, and the do layer. As the firms grow, each layer will expand in detail. The get the work layer includes the principals, the owners, and then the associates or associate principals, senior associates, and associates. The managed layer includes the directors, team leaders, and managers. And the do layer includes all technical and administrative staff that typically goes from level 1 to 3 or junior, intermediate to senior level on all ranges, whether it's administrative or technical. So in a very small firm with 1 to 4 staff, you most likely will not see the managed layer developed. It is an owner, or maybe 2 or 3, plus 1 to 3 technical employees or consulting designers. There may not be even full-time on staff with benefits. Let's look at the makeup of these 2 to 4 staff teams closer. With makeup, I'm referring to the statistics like title, salary level, billing rate, utilization, FTE, and the target revenues or billing potential this creates. Again, these are the firms where you have an owner and some staff, but no administrative staff at all, typically between 1 and 4 employees. And here I picked the largest one of the series that I have shown you in the last slide. Let's look at the model for a firm with 4 staff. At principal, with $150,000 salary, is billed at $200 an hour to clients, a target utilization rate of 55%, and is working full-time, which is shown as FTE 100%. So FTE stands for full-time employee. And an employee that works 20-hour a week would show as a 50% FTE. I assume, so the expenses associated with that is $150,000 on the base salary, for instance, of the owner, combined $450,000, all 4 of them. There's payroll taxes associated with it. And then there's, of course, other expenses like rent, insurance, benefits, technology, and such. So the total expenses are, in this model, the salaries and payroll taxes combined make up for about 75% of the expenses, whereas the other 25% cover the rest, which is a median of what I experience in the industry right now. So we take a closer look again at the same model, still the 4-person firm, same principle, salary, utilization, target billing rate, full-time employees. So the target revenues per year for this principal alone generates is $228,000. If she is billed at $200 an hour, 50% utilization out of 2,080 hours a year, that generates an potential income of $228,000. The 3 employees have varying levels of experience, as is shown in their billing rates. The most junior level employee has a relatively low utilization rate, as this employee will be assigned to a fair amount of marketing type assignments. This can generate $789,000 in revenues. So if the firm has actually that much work in the backlog, that's how you can really produce a decent result, because the utilization at 68% is very high. It's for full-time employees. The profit rate is at 24%, or in this case, $192,000. So now we look at a firm with 5 to 10 employees. So at the org chart, and it is composed of an owner plus an associate in a managerial role, several technical employees or consulting designers, and a few part-time consulting administrative staff. So the makeup of these 5 to 10 staff teams shows that the green managerial level and the gray layer of consulting administrative staff is developed and grows. Now, when we look at the different revenue models of these firms, here's a 5, the 6, the 7, 8, and 9 staff firm, you see how the revenues go up in each one and the expenses go up accordingly, of course. The main profile is that it's a firm owner or firm owners plus part-time administrative staff. And we look at the same criteria or data like title, salary level, billing rate, utilization, FTE, and target revenues that can be accomplished with that configuration. So here we look at the detailed revenue model of an A&D firm with 10 staff. So the target revenues per year this principal can generate is 21,000 higher than in the last one, since their utilization went up by 5%. So $200 an hour times 60% times 2,080 hours generates $249 and $600. The 6 technical employees have varying levels of experience, as is shown in their billing rates. The part-time administrative staff adds up to 1.16 FTE and comes at a fairly high cost of $157,000 in this case. Combined, they can generate revenues in the amount of 1.66 million. The utilization remains fairly high at 65% at 9.16 FTE. The profit rate is a little down, 18%, yet at 291,000, fairly rather well, I think. The middle management layer has a lower realizations than the other staff, because this staff member, an employee that most likely got promoted to an associate, has taken on now participates in managing the firm, the projects, and the staff. Again, even though there is a fairly high level of administrative staff, part-time in this case, in the firm is still profitable. Now we look at a firm with more than 11 staff. It is an owner plus associates and directors and managerial roles, several technical employees or consulting designers, and only a few part-time consulting administrative staff. So most everybody is now a full-time employee of the firm. The makeup of these 11 plus staff teams shows the green managerial level more pronounced and as full-time employees rather than consultants. Still, we're looking at small to medium firms that have middle management, owner, technical staff, full-time administrative staff. The main difference is that administrative staff changed to employee rather than consultant status. And like I said, the managerial level is more pronounced. Again, we look at these statistics like title, salary, billing rate, utilization, FTE, and target revenues. And here we look at the detailed revenue model of an A&D firm with 25 staff. The principal level shows that 2 employees were promoted and their utilization went down to 60%. The managerial level has 5 staff with a utilization around 70%. They also participate in the leadership. The remaining 14 technical staff targets utilization rates range from 70 to 85%. The administrative team of 3 includes a bookkeeper and 2 full-time staff for marketing or office management and staff support, and a part-time strategist of some kind. They can generate 4.6 million in revenues. The office-wide utilization is at 65% with 25.15 FTE. This team can generate 21% in profit or 952,000. Please note that the billing rates of the individual staff levels as the firm sizes became bigger did not get increased in this model, as is often the case in reality. Also, the basic assumption of payroll cost is 75% of operating cost is applied to all models, which is an average of what I observe in the industry as the kind of cost of payroll, and the payroll cost has increased over the last 3 years from a 65 to 75 to 70%, more to like a 70 to 80% or 75%. So I used the median of 75% for these models. So let's look at some trends. A question often asked is, when can a firm afford administrative staff while remaining profitable? Or when and how? In my experience and supported by the models I show today, A&D firms with 1 to 20 staff will meet that goal when applying a ratio of 1 admin staff to 8 technical staff, or 12.5%. In firms with 20 to 40 staff, that ratio changes to 1 admin staff to 7 technical employees, and a 1 in more than 6 ratio in firms with more than 60 staff. 40 staff, excuse me. So what does that mean for profitability? In firms up to 20 staff, an average profit level of 18%, truth ranging between 15 and 25, can be reached assuming the firm maintains an average utilization level of 65% and an average of 12.5 of administrative staff. What it does mean also is that utilization, the 65% average utilization means also that all these hours that are billable are actually really billed to the client and not written off in the process. So if you manage your firm, you have the work, you have the right profile of employees, a good blended mix, a good balanced mix, some administrative staff, keep them busy, manage the projects well, you actually can produce that profit and add the administrative level staff over time. All right, let's go to the next section of the presentation, the financial reports. So no matter how big your firm is, you should know how your firm is doing financially to make sound decisions. So what are the typical reports an A&D leader looks at? Definitely an employee roster with a revenue model, workload and forecasting as a chart and as a graph, preferably. You know your revenues by client type, what the blend is. You have a profit and loss statement in summary and in detail that you really understand what it means. You know what your KPIs, the key performance indicators are. You look at charts and graphs possibly. And also you do know what your accounts receivable are, the AR part. So I showed you this chart earlier, and it is one of the most basic lists an A&D firm needs to really have. Aside from keeping data in one place, it offers insights into what kind of revenues the team can generate when managed well. So the data points that are mapped are, again, I just repeat again, 10th time today, maybe it sticks. There's the title, the salary, the hourly cost rate, the break-even rate, which helps setting up the billing rate because you want to be above the break-even rate, the utilization, target utilization, the FTE level, not all employees are full-time, target revenues, the number of direct hours, then the direct labor, which generates also the direct labor cost, the indirect hours, which generates the indirect labor cost, something you need to produce the KPIs, unless you have an ERP, and we get to that at the end of the presentation. You can see at a glance what your office utilization and profit may be when adding the other expenses in the chart. It serves as an outline budget for hiring. So the other expenses I explained earlier on, in this case, was just a percentage. Truth is, once you know your profit and loss statement, and if you understand how to read it, you can put the real number in instead of an assumption. So your sheet might look different. This is not like the target. This is what your sheet should looks like. This is a model, and each firm has its own model because you have your own salaries, you have your own billing rates, possibly also the utilization, but I would definitely map it to better understand what is the potential this firm has and what does it mean if and when I add a staff level of whatever level it is, whether it's an administrative staff or even a technical staff. What does it do to the bottom line, to the cost, but also to the revenues it can generate? To really make decisions knowing that. So it's a very powerful chart. The next one I find as important. I hope that either one of your firms has that. It's a workload and forecasting chart that just maps what kind of work do you have and when are you able to bill it. So it's a very simple forecast chart listing the month, again, for a 5-person firm. It lists the months of the year on the top, the columns, and the projects in the row headers to the left. So there is like 9 projects. There's the months January through December 2022. Left to right and top to bottom, there's 9 projects that firm has active and engaged in work. What you need to do is track how much fees you have in contract, which is the second big column after the actual labor log. And then you need to know how much of that fee is still available to bill. How much did you already bill, and how much is available to bill moving forward. And then you have to map it out. What is your best knowledge thinking of how much per month you bill on either one of these projects in the months coming? So the third project from top, the MOB, has 15,000 left. This firm assumes it will last me 2 more months with an average of 7,500 billings per month. So that's September and October, no billing after that, crossed out. So you go through that with every one of your projects. So the top part refers to the projects in contract, and the bottom to projects in the pipeline, projects you're pursuing, you have been working with clients, you have been talking, maybe even proposed for. There's a great likelihood that these projects are real and you have already numbers. Otherwise, I would not show it on that chart. When referring to the fee potential per month, we take that from the employee roster. You can also see the monthly variance, the line below it, between what the backlog is and what your potential is based on your staff combination. And it gives you a number of FTE you may be short or have too many at the bottom of the mid-level chart. It also maps the actual billing as far as you know it. So you can again see how did the forecast deviate from the reality. So the same data we looked at the chart is here shown as a graph. The black columns show the projected billing of fees in contract. The blue, the projected billing of fees in the pipeline. The olive colored dashed line shows the fee potential as a reference. This is what your firm can and should bill every month as a minimum. And the orange dotted line tracks the actual billing of the year up to August of 2022 in this case. It exceeded the potential, very good year, very strong performance of the firm. So now we look at the same tool, more elaborate for a firm with about 10 employees. Again, the top refers to the projects in contract, and the the bottom to projects in the pipeline. For potential per month, fee potential per month is gained from the employee roster and is added for reference. It displays the monthly variance, plus it also gives the FTE, full-time employee number, you may be short or have too many. That is shown in this case at the bottom of the chart, not in the mid-level. So the FTE is shown as a red number, fourth row from the bottom. The actual billing is also referred to, and you can see the difference. The main difference is that the data for this kind of chart is going into each project's phases and tasks and tracks the schedules. So it's much more refined of a system, but can be more accurate for that matter as well. The same data is mapped in a graph, and it looks very similar to the one for the 5-person firm. So the black columns show the projected billings of fees and contracts, blue, the projected billing of fees in the pipeline. The olive colored dashed line shows the fee potential as a reference. And the orange dotted line tracks the actual billing of the year. Now we talked through the employee roster and the fee projections, two very important tools to have at hand. So you just know how much work can we do, and B, how much work do I have, and what is the difference? So that's what the FTE line in that spreadsheet shows. The next important type of information to know is these graphs are actually produced as part of the fee projections. How much of your revenues are in which market? If you give each project, basically you put it in the categories that you find relevant for your firms, and you track that. So you know how many of your projects are healthcare compared to institutional or housing. You know how much of your percent of fees are in each one of the market or the exact dollars. So you can track that and are at least aware of that. The next thing, very important too, is this is an abbreviated profit and loss statement, again for the firm with 5 employees only. So here I gathered information in certain categories that I find relevant for firm owners to know and better understand. We look at the years 2020 up to August 2022. There is the labor cost in light green, other payroll cost in the darker green, the office and technology in the cream color. Technology is a big expense and nowadays in our world. Then the blue is the office rent, which can also be a substantial expense, including utilities and storage if you have that or is necessary. I also would like you to track any marketing efforts, which is shown in the pink, and possibly car and transportation costs that can be very high depending on how your office is situated. And then you catch the rest and other expenses. And if they're very high, then I would recommend you look a little bit closer at what are the other expenses. Now this is a profit and loss statement taken from QuickBooks, organized in Excel a little bit, but this is a standard QuickBooks profit and loss statement. And you just track it over the course of the months on the right, and then the yearly summaries once the year is done to the left. And you color code the type of expense based on what the summary shows before, and it grabs that information as a summary, like I said. Here, this is the next level of the profit and loss statement. You look at the KPIs of your firm. Again, this is a 5-person firm, and the profit and loss summary plus the employee roster combined give you that information. You can calculate what is your profit in dollars, your profit in as a percentage of revenues. You look at the utilization rate. You look at direct labor cost, at the net effective multiplier, at the overhead rate, and the break-even rate. The break-even rate is very important to generate profitable billing rates. I did not go into a lot of detail today, but I'm more than happy to do that in a follow-up session I do in a couple of days. It tracks the number of staff, the revenues per staff, a very important number. You can compare yourself to the industry. Where does my firm fall to other sets? Those lists are published every year by the San Francisco Business Times, for instance. The operating cost per year and per month. Operating cost per month is a very critical data. That's the amount of money you need to bring in on a cash basis just to break even and know that you're not losing, that you don't have to basically support your firm. And here are some of the information that I just showed as a chart shown in graphs. So there's the revenues, operating cost, and profit. So you see between 2020 and 2022, 2022 is projected out for a full year in the second to right column. So definitely a growth. The firm has grown. The revenues have grown, the expenses have grown, but the profit has also grown in terms of a percentage. Then we look at the utilization rate, peaked in 2021, went somewhat down in 22, but not as low as 2020. The revenues per staff have been going up every year, which is nice. And the NEM or break-even rate has been going down, which is nice. Unusual for that, I would say, but I guess it can happen. Most firms' break-even rate has gone up because payroll costs has gone up substantially in the last 2 to 3 years. All right, we're getting close to the end. I promise I will not tell too much more new information at this point. An important piece of information that you really need to have at your fingertips as an owner is the accounts receivable. So this is also, again, coming out of QuickBooks, just so you understand how much does each one of your clients owe you and how far back is that going? Is it like a very current invoice, like in the current or 1 to 30 column, or does it go back to the more than 90 days column? Then you really have to follow up and call that client and ask what's going on. Is there anything wrong with the invoice? Just to better understand when can you expect that income. So the accounts receivables, typically on average in our industry, firms get paid within 60 days. And I do recommend also that the AR number that you show going back here, this is 250,000 close, should not be higher than twice the average monthly billing. Let's see, I didn't even check on that. So the revenues per year, 500. So that's about 60,000. Let's go back here. So for a 5-person firm, I would say the AR should not be higher than 120,000, maybe 150,000 at best. So if this is the AR of the small firm, this is a bad sign, really bad sign. What I also recommend owners of A&D firms to really budget for is to always have cash at hand for about 2 to 3 average monthly billings. So that in a way you can cover operations if in case something is not going as well as you had planned. All right, we're very close to the end now. Let's look at the systems briefly. What I mean with systems is the software, the accounting and project management software A&D firms use. Typically, they fall in 2 categories. One is the ERPs, and I explain that a little bit later, and the rest is everything else that is for time tracking, for billing, for accounting, and for task management. So the time tracking, billing, accounting, and task management category, the softwares I'm talking about are Excel and Word, often used for tracking and for billing. QuickBooks, of course, used for accounting, sometimes billing, sometimes time tracking as well. And then the world of project management and timesheet tracking softwares like Harvest, Monograph, ArchiOffice, and Mosaic, and possibly a whole lot others that I haven't even mentioned here. Then there's the world of enterprise ERPs, or enterprise resource planning systems. So typically professional services ERP software includes modules for financial management and accounting, billing, human resources, project management, and sometimes client resource management, CRM, as well. And ERPs give your employees access across all the departments, the ability to exchange information and complete end-to-end business processes. Meaning you find everything in one place rather than having it to patch together from 2 or 3 different software packages. Typical softwares are Core BQE, Ajera, which is a Deltek product, then Deltek Vantage Point, or Clearview InFocus. So what kind of system is best? In my experience, firms opt for ERPs often when they have more than 20 staff, sometimes earlier. And some of the project management and time tracking software packages offer great graphics, yet what they miss is they don't give you access to the big picture questions like, what is my backlog per month? How much do I bill next month or the month after? And what is the utilization level of the staff? How is my AR doing? When can I expect payment? And what is the operating cost per month? Or what is the profit, the bottom line? So these systems offer you more access to task or project management on that level, but not the firm financial management level. You will need additional software like QuickBooks or, like I said, going to the ERPs. All right. We get to the Q&A session. I'm sorry that I took longer than I had planned. So we looked at a very wide range of topics related to A&D firm financial management today, and most likely the presentation raises a lot of questions. Knowing and understanding your firm's financial performance and capacity allows A&D leaders to make sound business decisions. And that applies to a growth market as much as a stagnant market. So I will present on burning questions related to small firm growth and how to stay competitive this week on Thursday, at 12:30 at AIA San Francisco Small Business Committee. And today's attendees will be invited. I'll make sure you get invitations to that event if you are interested in getting more information. Anyway, so let me look at the chat, what questions have come up. Okay. Overhead rate that cities and RFP ask for the same. A question is, are the overhead rates that cities and RFPs ask for the same? They should be, yes. Because in a way, an overhead rate for a firm is specific to your firm's makeup of expenses. And so it should relate to the same question. What is the software used for these graphs? This is all produced in Excel, by the way. So it's a very simple process of extracting data out of QuickBooks and out of time management software and combining them and generating graphs with that. These are simple Excel books that for firm financial management that I recommend small firms to have and to build if they don't have it, to really track their own performance. I do work with my clients on all of these in depth, I would say, yes. By the way, the ERPs, the more complex systems have built in what they call, like I know Ajera as a system rather well and have been using it extensively as an employee and also in working with clients. They can produce a lot of these graphs automatically. The advantage of these ERPs is that they have the information all in one place, and you can create these dashboards, they call them, to visualize the performance of your firm very easily. Can we have a copy of the presentation? Yes. The AIA CIC will share a recording of the presentation with everybody, so you can go through the presentation and stop and look at the graphs or at the information and listen to what I say as an explanation, and hopefully makes more sense. I do know I put a lot of information into the presentation today. All right, good. It seems like we don't have more questions right now. Then I thank everybody very much for attending today. I hope you got a lot of information out of it and you learned how to run your firm more effectively. If not, then get back to me and ask me what I'm missing. More than happy to stay in touch. My email is shown in the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Is it just you and me now, Sydney?
No, I'm leaving. Bye.
Bye, Marcia. So we still have 2 more people in the room.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they stepped
They probably
away.
have it on a screen somewhere and are doing something else. All right. Very good. Yeah. I hope that I got them at least interested enough to want to know more about it, about the topic.
Absolutely. I think it was a great, introduction to a lot of stuff that people managing their own firms, need to start having knowledge about.
Good. So there were about 45-ish people there from what I saw.
The highest I got was 47, but for the most part, it was about 45.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. A couple of people did, register a couple minutes in, so I'll send you an updated list.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll work on, kind of trimming the ends and then posting it to YouTube, hopefully later today.
Okay. Good. They were not interested in the dialogue too much today. Too bad. That's fine. I had a lot of information, so I hope that at least they took something out of it.
They probably just need time to digest everything.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I will send you the information about that Thursday presentation so you can add it to the recording and to the email going out.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Bye-bye.